So, I am aware that we have a lot of foreign viewers, to say the least. And I was made aware of this by someone basically asking, what is universal credit? So, I think it's worth really going over what universal credit is and why it has become essentially such a problem. So, before we get to universal credit, we have to talk about the last benefit system we had. And the last benefit system was, if you wanted that benefit, you had to apply for it. So, if you were unemployed, you went for job seekers. If you wanted a housing allowance, you had to apply for the housing allowance. If you wanted a parental allowance, you had to apply for that. Disabled, long-term sick. Basically, you just had to apply for it. And this caused a lot of problems because a lot of people didn't realise they could be on this because they hadn't applied for it and because they had to go through the application system to actually be able to apply to get onto it. It was confusing, to say the least, the previous benefit system. But the Labour government decided we need to sort this out. So they decided, let's tie all the benefits up into one system. So you only have to apply once, and then we assess, and then you get access to whatever you want. You don't have to go through the same application process again and again and again, or through myriad different application processes to do it. Now, I agree with that in principle. It's a good idea. The other thing that was major about it was they decided to make it a digital format. So to apply for it, you had to have the internet, you had to have a computer. And we'll get to this later down the line, but Labour started rolling it out in these areas. We'll trial it, we'll see what happens. And instantly, Labour flagged up a potential lot of issues. They identified that because this was going into one credit, and not only that, but normally the housing credit before UC, universal credit, it used to go directly to the council or directly to the landlord. So universal credit put an emphasis on shall we say, on the individual to actually pay their, make sure that money went to the landlord. Next of all you had was the election, which you brought in the coalition government with the Lib Dems and the Conservatives. And this is where William Hague comes in. William Hague comes over it and says, universal credit's fine, we're going to fast forward the rollout. However, the ministers, the civil servants, come forward and say, that's a bad idea. There are these problems we can foresee. In these areas we are charting these potential problems. If you roll it out, this will exacerbate a lot of problems. However, this doesn't matter. William Hague rolled it out. Not only that, they also see a opportunity to, well, shall we say, diminish a lot of people's incomes. Because at that time, especially around that time, there were a lot of newspapers, especially the Daily Mail and the Sun, going after what they called benefit frauds and benefit cheats. Of course, when you actually look into the numbers, people actually cheating on the benefits are incredibly low. Incredibly low. So it was really a non-issue, but it was made an issue, and the Conservatives sprung on this to essentially limit the amount that people could receive on universal credit. Now, bear in mind, back before this, if you were receiving multiple different benefits, if one benefit was lowered, it didn't affect the rest. However, because the Conservatives were so insistent about these benefit cheats, and they were outraged the fact that a single mother of 3 children who needed a council, who needed a housing allowance, as well as like the job seeker and the children's allowance, was so outraged that she was earning like 28,000 or something like that, I think it was said at the time. They were outraged. It said, how can one woman earn this much through the benefit system? So they used a lot of these scare tactics to basically, okay, we're going to cap it. So they put, I think the cap is 20,000. So you cannot, if you are in need and you need, let's say you are unemployed, you need a housing allowance, let's say a children's allowance, you cannot go over that limit. So this has caused huge problems. And not only that, but because this is now, rather than many benefits, one benefit, they've continuously reduced the amount people can actually receive on this one benefit. So it's not just that it's capped, they are now receiving less and less and less. And this, of course, has caused multiple problems. I urge you, if you haven't read it, go and read the UN report on this and look at what they're saying universal credit has done, that this has been a systematic targeting of the most vulnerablest in the United Kingdom society. And I absolutely 100% agree, concerning what this has actually done. You've seen food banks, for example. Prior to universal credit, food bank usage in areas where there hadn't been universal credit, to where it suddenly gets rolled out into universal credit, food bank usage dramatically increases. I think you're seeing not only doubling, but you also see the increase of opening of food banks because the demand for the usage of them is there. The next problem we get into, the fact that it's a digital format. So you are now are having to rely on being actually able to get online. This has caused numerous problems. Not only that, but the Tory austerity plan has closed a lot of job centres. This has left a lot of the poorest in our society who do not have access and who rely on public transport having to at least travel more than an hour to get to a meeting that lasts 20 minutes. You know, what's the point of having a digital system if you are still insisting that people come and see you once or twice a week? Now, I know that that has actually been relaxed in some places. I know that you can get away with about a month's visit between visit in some areas. However, in some, they insist it being a week, at least every other week you are coming in. And of course, this causes problems because then you have to pay for your transport to get into the town centre and then to get back. And of course, this also adds to your cap as well. So, so this, as you can see, this is just the start of these problems. So, don't underestimate how bad universal credit is, because a lot of people, I guarantee below this video, are going to go, oh, but these people get money for doing nothing. These people need that money. If they don't receive that money, what do you think they're going to do? You know, child poverty levels in this country, since, the austerity started, have reached unimaginable levels. What this, I think, I don't know if they're like the highest they've ever been, but this shouldn't be the case. You also have pensioners as well who are there, have been moving into poverty as well. This should not be the case in a society, at least in an economy that, well, at the time of doing this was at least the 6th. We've slipped from 5th to 6th, by the way, and we're probably going to slip to 7th soon. In the world. That's not how we should be taking care of the poorest in our society. A society like ours should be focusing on taking care of the most vulnerablest and, poorest in our society and being able to give them advantages so that they can get themselves out of that situation. Because no one wants to be poor. There's this right-wing malaise that people, and again, mentioning back about the whole, attacking people receiving, universal credit. No one wants to be in that situation. No one wants to be poor. No one wants to have to rely on handouts. In fact, one of the things one of the most damning things, even bigger than that, is if you look at the Joseph Rowntree Foundation. They went into and did their own study on food banks, and one of the big things they found is that a lot of people who can use food banks don't want to use food banks because they are so embarrassed about their situation. And that is because of the media attacking these people, the right-wing media in particular. So, and this isn't just a problem caused by Brexit, because this is what a lot of people were so angry about. This was the Tory government doing this and imposing austerity, and this has been the result. This was one of the anger points about people who voted for Brexit. It wasn't the European Union who did this to us, it was our own government. And here we are. So, that's universal credit. It had the best of intentions, but unfortunately has been turned into something, to quote the UN report, that has been used to systematically target the most vulnerable in our society.